In the wake of mass rioting and looting throughout Chicago, mostly in its downtown areas, Mayor Lori Lightfoot is saying, no, we do not need National Guard help. While Donald Trump is simultaneously saying it's time to call in the National Guard to Portland over 74 nights of rioting. Chicago was hit pretty hard. People were romping about the downtown area, moving through the Mag Mile, near the Gold Coast, and up into some North Side neighborhoods. There's cops getting shot at, returning fire, a security guard's in critical condition. In one video, a man fires several gunshots into a window. He's trying to rob a Gucci store. You got another video where a dude rams a vehicle into a window as looters cheer him on. And many of these looters are filming themselves doing it. These people are not protesting anything. Some of them are pretending they are, but these are just opportunists taking advantage of the fact that law enforcement has been crippled in the wake of these Black Lives Matter riots. That's why it's surprising to me that considering how many nights of rioting we've had in Portland, that the mayor of Chicago is saying no to National Guard or federal assistance. Donald Trump right now is saying that we need to send the National Guard into Portland to quell the unrest. I find this story rather frustrating. I want to get into the crux of what's going on with Chicago because there's a lot of updates here, but the point of this is to talk about the deployment of the National Guard and why it's probably appropriate now more than ever. You see, Donald Trump deployed federal officers to the federal courthouse after the 39th night of rioting in Portland. Protesters, extremists, whatever you want to call them, broke into the building and set fires. Following this, they deployed federal law enforcement to bolster the defensive capabilities of their courthouse, and that is all. What did we hear from the media, though? The media claimed Trump was sending out secret police, his Gestapo, to patrol the streets with unmarked vans and vehicles and unidentifiable officers beating people in the streets. It never happened. But I'll tell you this. If Trump did actually deploy federal law enforcement to guard our city's streets throughout this country, the rioting would not have happened in Chicago. So perhaps Trump is right. But he's not just saying we need the National Guard. He's saying local officials need to be held accountable for this. They claim, all of these leftists, at the moment federal officers stayed inside the courthouse and deferred to local police, it all became peaceful. And that's a lie. It wasn't true then. It's not true now. So perhaps Trump is correct. There was rioting in Portland once again for the 74th night. Widespread mass looting throughout Chicago. Riots in Seattle where they damaged and destroyed a bunch of windows. And an unlawful assembly declared in Phoenix, Arizona. Among many other protests that weren't as notable because they didn't, break out into full-scale riots. At what point do we say this needs to be put under, we need control of these cities, and the local officials are failing to actually do their jobs? I think at this point, Trump is correct, and we need some kind of federal law enforcement to help deal with what's going on in these cities. Otherwise, it will get worse, which is why it's shocking to me that Mayor Lori Lightfoot is saying once again, no to federal assistance. They aren't able to stop the violence, which is getting worse in almost every single city. Chicago did deploy a couple new units, which did see crime go down a little bit, but gun violence is still really, really bad. It's about time these local officials swallow their pride and recognize they can't deal with this, and they should take Trump up on his offer. Otherwise, they're proving him right. In cities that are run by Democrats, there's mass looting, riots, unrest, and at the federal level, Trump is deploying law enforcement to guard federal jurisdiction. A lot of people are complaining that he's sending in these secret police, but he's not. And I'm sure many local residents now wish that he did. So let's do this. Let's not waste any more time. Let me show you exactly what Trump said. And I want to break down the lie about how Portland ever was peaceful, and then talk about what's going on in Chicago and why it's time to be a bit more proactive than even Trump is saying. Trump should be saying we need the National Guard in Chicago, too, because the unrest that's going on in Chicago, according to my family members, actually never stopped. While we did see mass unrest last night and looting, there has been an increase in crime and smaller groups looting certain areas ever since the George Floyd riots started. Let's read this first story. Trump urges Portland to bring in National Guard amid unrest, warns officials they will be held responsible. Before we get started, however, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, subscribe to my channel. About half the people who watch aren't actually subscribed. And if you want to make sure that YouTube does let you know when my videos go up every day at 4 p.m., hit that subscribe button just below the video, give it a little tap, and my videos are more likely to pop up in your feed. Also hit the subscribe button, hit the like button and the notification bell. Let's read the news. Fox says, President Trump on Monday urged Portland to bring in the National Guard after months of unrest, calling the city out of control and warning local officials that they will be held responsible. He said, Portland, which is out of control, should finally, after almost 3 months, bring in the National Guard. The mayor and governor are putting people's lives at risk. They will be held responsible. The Guard is ready to act immediately. The courthouse is secured by Homeland. They like to claim that Trump is a dictator. He's not. He's actually not forcing his way into any of these cities. In places like Chicago, he's deployed FBI, ATF, and DEA to assist by doing desk work, allowing police to actually go out onto the street and deal with real crime. But no, Trump isn't deploying National Guard or the military, invoking the Insurrection Act. He's not doing any of this. He's letting these cities prove to their own residents that they're incapable of dealing with the unrest. And maybe they should have listened to Trump a long time ago. That's the warning for Mayor Lori Lightfoot when she keeps saying over and over again, I don't need help from Trump. She said it last month or the month before. Now she's saying it again. You know what's going to happen. The unrest will spark back up because people on the far left are planning these massive protests around election time. They say Trump's tweets come after a riot was declared in Portland, Oregon on Sunday, as officers tried to quell unrest that saw protesters march on a police union building, throw objects at officers, block a road, and set dumpsters on fire. Live video had showed multiple dumpster fires had been set near the building less than a half an hour after police tweeted criminal activities, including but not limited to vandalism, unlawful entry to the building, or fire starting, could be subject to arrest, the use of tear gas and or crowd control munitions, according to the AP. They say Democratic Mayor Ted Wheeler said violent protesters are also serving as political props for the president, while the president has called the protesters sick and dangerous anarchists running wild in the city streets. They mentioned that tear gas was used in Portland. The president has been denouncing the violent demonstrations in Portland for weeks, and his administration deployed federal agents, including some U.S. Marshals Special Operations, CBP, ICE, etc., to the federal property. All Trump has done so far is guard federal jurisdiction, and good for him. The other night in Portland, several officers were injured by mortar explosions. They were burned. But this is typical. You know, every morning I wake up, I say, oh, hey, look, the riots in Portland again. And most of you are probably tired of it. I mean, I'm tired of talking about it. We get it. More people throwing bombs, starting fires. But now they're attacking residential homes. They're vandalizing residential homes. They're attacking people at their property. In one video, a man is screaming, get off my property. They won't listen to him. The riots are getting out of hand, and something needs to be done about it. But what do we hear? What do we hear from all these leftists? That when Trump's feds withdrew, it became peaceful, right? Well, then why are we here? Because it wasn't true then, and it's not true now. Take a look at this tweet from Brooklyn Dad. This guy is a very prominent Trump reply guy. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers. He says, there have been 3 straight nights of peaceful protests since Trump's goons left Portland. It's not a coincidence. 20,500 retweets, except Trump's DHS never left. They're still there to this day. And it was never peaceful. And I'll prove it. But there's more. This tweet from Ryan Cooper. So Ryan Cooper is a national correspondent at The Week. He tweeted out a story from the Wall Street Journal that said, with no federal agents on streets, Portland protest turns largely peaceful. Not true. And he says, imagine that. Sorry. Now, I can respect the Wall Street Journal, but they got this one wrong. Here's a tweet from Ahmed Baba. He says, once again, Portland protests were peaceful last night since federal forces aren't there. Also, every single person in this clip is wearing a mask. This is why these protests haven't caused COVID-19 spikes like bars and other gatherings. It was just not true. Now that the protests are sparking back up, or I should say riots, I'm sorry, the riots are sparking back up, we see things like this. Pitching a think piece on Portland, how Trump's federal officers in Portland changed the character of the city forever and made truly peaceful protest impossible even after the feds left. I love it. I love the narrative game they're playing. You see how when the state claimed, here's what happened. The state said they would start policing these protests, these riots. And the feds said, okay. So the feds deferred to the police. And around this time, it was, I would say, more peaceful, simply because the feds stopped engaging as people burned things in the street and beat people in the street, but they were still doing it. But because we didn't see widespread imagery of the police attacking people, just the rioters, being violent, they didn't report on it, I suppose. But now that the violence has escalated and it's worse than it's basically ever been, they're now saying, well, it's Trump's fault for simply being there caused it to not be able to be peaceful. Take a look at this from the Washington Post. Trump ordered federal forces to quell Portland protests, but the chaos ended as soon as they left. It never did. I love this one. Without feds, Portland protests again peaceful. Just lies, lie after lie after lie. Now, it was true that many of the protesters stopped the far leftists from throwing explosives and starting fires for the most part once this ceasefire was agreed upon. I call it ceasefire, whatever you want to call it. The governor of Oregon said the feds were withdrawing and that state police would be moving in. It seems likely, in my opinion, that many of these, protester types realized now they needed to look good for the cameras. The only problem, while on the surface we did see it was less tense, again, probably because the feds weren't actually stopping them from being violent, they were still violent. August 1st, this article is written from Courthouse News. Okay, well, here's a statement from DHS on August 1st. They talk about stacks of papers and plywood was set on fire outside the courthouse fence in the vicinity. They say OSP engaged the group setting the fire. Rioters threw objects at FPS personnel as they responded to extinguish the fire. No use of force or injuries were reported. Rioters broke 2 windows at the Edith Green Federal Building but disappeared before FPS could respond. DHS officers conducted 0 arrests. Neither federal officers or OSP reported any use of force or injuries to officers. So, if the DHS is reporting that there were windows smashed, fire started, they did engage with them, what's up with all these stories and statements from the left? Propaganda. Propaganda and lies because they don't want Trump to be correct. Now Trump is saying we need the National Guard because it's worse than ever. He was right the whole time. What are they saying now? Well, it's actually the feds' fault that things are increasingly violent. Oh, I'm sure. 39 nights of rioting. And the far left used some kind of welding cutting tool to break into the courthouse, vandalize everything. And only after 39 nights did feds come in to help defend the courthouse. And they say Trump caused this? I'm sorry, it's patently absurd. Here's a tweet from Andy No, August 2nd, 1:31 a.m. From August 1st, overnight. Antifa gathered in a residential area of Portland to attack a Portland police building. They've been pushed far back. They were rioting on the 1st into the 2nd. I have another tweet from Andy. This one from 7:48 p.m. August 1st from the night prior, where they said it was peaceful. BLM and Antifa protesters beat up someone in their own camp at the park next to Portland Federal Courthouse. I recognize some of these people as ones who started fires at night. Some have also been arrested and released multiple times. We have this tweet from Andy, 3:50 a.m. August 1st, from the night of July 31st into the 1st. Antifa protesters in downtown Portland have started burning American flags in the street and burning Bibles. So no, it never stopped. It kept going on. And on the night of the 1st, while this peaceful demonstration was occurring, at least according to these leftists on Twitter, more than 150 rounds were fired, victims struck by bullet in Montevilla neighborhood, Portland police announced. So no, it was never peaceful. And I'll say it again. If Trump had actually sent out federal law enforcement to Chicago, to New York, and these other places, this rioting would have stopped a long time ago. But he didn't. Trump only used the feds to defend federal jurisdiction. I guess, it's rather unfortunate, but I'm going to say it. If Joe Biden gets elected, then you will not have this kind of response. Joe Biden will do what all of the other Democrats are doing and standing down and allowing this to happen, because here we go. Even after this, okay, mass looting throughout downtown Chicago into the north side neighborhoods, they pulled the drawbridges around Chicago. So there's a portion of Chicago's downtown, which is basically a peninsula. You got the lake on one side, Chicago River on the other, and it creates this large section where if you lift all the bridges, Nobody's getting out of this area. And it's actually relatively easy to police. Well, they did this to stop people from getting in from the Gold Coast Mag Mile area north of the river. After all this, according to some family members of mine, they weren't surprised to hear it because they've said, oh, well, the looting and the rioting and stuff has been ongoing nonstop since end of May. It never ended. And I said, well, how come we aren't hearing about this? Here's what I'm told by, some locals, to put it, I guess take it with a grain of salt. There have been groups that have been engaging in looting and smash and grabs since the riots started. It's just not that big. It's a handful of people here and there, but the crime seems to be up, at least according to people I know who are in the city. This wasn't surprising to them because it's just an escalation of what's already been going on. Apparently someone pulled up to a store with a U-Haul van. Like, these people know what's happening. They're prepared to start looting. There's no confidence in the police to actually deal with the crime. And that's why I showed you everything about Portland. Here's the mayor of Chicago saying we don't need National Guard. Here's the mayor on June 26th. I don't need leadership lessons from Donald Trump. As our police officers, street outreach workers, and residents continue to work tirelessly to keep our communities safe, he's using the victims of gun violence in our city to score cheap political points, spew racist rhetoric, and ignore the impact of COVID across the country. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and all too typical. Same old tired playbook. How about some leadership not steeped in the divide and conquer tactics? I stand with Governor Pritzker in providing for the safety and well-being of our residents. If only she actually listened to the president and actually took in the help from federal law enforcement or the National Guard, the looting and rioting would not have happened last night in Chicago. This is a failure of leadership for political reasons. She rejected what Trump was saying. It is stupid. You don't have to like the man to recognize you need help. Portland is unable to stop the riots after 74 nights, and she was given an opportunity months ago to accept federal assistance to stop the violence in the streets, and she said, I don't need lessons from Trump. And she's saying it again. Here's my prediction. Trump was right. He was right not in the sense that he came out, there's going to be more rioting in Chicago. He was right in the sense that the police are struggling to deal with the unrest. You need federal help. Whatever happens in the future, well, now it's on them. And it is. So guess what? The looting, the rioting happens. It's going on in Portland. It's happening in Seattle. You know, Seattle tried to actually stop their police from using riot munitions against rioters. And the police had to put out a message saying, we're not going to be able to help you because our hands are tied. A federal judge had to intervene. Once again, the federal government helping to stop the unrest that the locals don't seem to care about. Well, now, after all this, Mayor Lori Lightfoot is still saying, I do not need your help. Swallow your pride, man. Swallow that pride. Push your ego down and say, anything we can do to help the people of Chicago feel safe and secure, I am willing to accept. Any available resources to help secure our city are welcome. Why not? If the federal government says all we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to help you out, what's the problem with this? Well, here we go. Mayor Lori Lightfoot rejected calls for the National Guard to patrol Chicago in the wake of overnight looting downtown while defending herself on Monday from criticism that her administration failed to protect the city. Lightfoot said she spoke with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and neither believes the National Guard is needed at this time. The city has been working with state police, she said. Lightfoot also preemptively criticized President Trump, who had previously threatened to send in federal agents to intervene in Chicago street crime. No, this is ridiculous. FBI investigators, not boots on the ground law enforcement. He recently sent a bunch of agents to the city as part of Operation Legend, which Lightfoot said she supports as long as it's operating through U.S. Attorney John Losh. So what's the problem? Trump is doing here's what's happening. Trump says, look at all these fine, beautiful law enforcement we have right here. Let them know what you need, and they're here to accommodate. And she's like, I don't need nothing from Trump. I don't need the National Guard. They're gonna follow your lead. You tell them what you need. They're here to help. They're giving you additional resources. They're not telling you what to do. Why won't you accept this? Oh, I get it. It'll make Trump look good, I suppose. You know, they want to make it. Here's what they're saying. Trump is failing this country. Look at all the civil unrest. Trump has offered you support. You rejected it. Well, Trump is failing on COVID. Trump has offered you support. You rejected. He's not forcing anything on anybody. Look, man, I got family in Chicago. This is annoying to me. that she's saying she supports Operation Legend so long as it operates through the U.S. Attorney. So what's wrong with the National Guard operating under your instruction? More resource. It's ridiculous. Pritzker said Monday he reached out to Lightfoot overnight to offer the state's help. And Illinois State Police closed on-ramps and off-ramps where necessary for the city of Chicago. Illinois State Police Director Brendan Kelly has been in touch with Chicago police officials, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support the city as we did back in May and June when looting and mayhem occurred back then. Why were they not prepared for this? Did they think it was all over after the peak of the nationwide riots in June? Were they like, well, that's it, we're all done here, don't need any assistance? When Trump said at the end of June, federal assistance is ready and available, and she said, we don't need support for Trump. Why weren't they prepared for what happened last night? And for that matter, what's going on in Portland? You know, man, I don't live in Portland. I don't live in Chicago, and I left for a reason. Chicago's been horribly mismanaged for as long as I have been alive, and longer. As long as I could tell, the city was just awful. So I left. Not that I'm in a better place. New Jersey's not doing too well either. But I look at this, and I'll tell you what bothers me about Chicago is I have family members there. So I want them to get their act together. Otherwise, I'm going to see to getting my family out in whatever ways I can. If you're still in the city. Now my family's mostly in the suburbs, so at least that's better than being in these cities. But this is nuts, man. Here's a quote. Criminals need to be held accountable, Pritzker said. I have, of course, been an advocate for police accountability and for reforms, significant reforms. Having said that, these were criminals, people who broke in and were shooting people. We had 13 officers injured last night. This is criminal activity, and those criminals need to be held accountable. You're right. So why didn't you know it was going to happen? Look, if in the May 25th, incident, which led to these widespread riots, I say we're all caught off guard. We have police ready and available, and we want to protect our city streets and our communities. And sometimes these things happen, and we're not ready for them. Well, it's been nonstop in Portland, so we know it's happening across the country. What made you think it was over? That Chicago could just be like, all right, pack it in, boys. Everybody head back. We're not going to have a plan in place for this. We're not going to have anything ready for widespread looting or riots like we did it last month. It's all done, even though the election is coming up. And now when Trump says National Guard or you will be held accountable, what do they say? No. We don't need, you know what? You were wrong then. You're going to be wrong now. Mark my words. Lightfoot faced criticism from Alderman Brian Hopkins, who represents parts of downtown. Hopkins said he was on Michigan Avenue from midnight to about 4 a.m. and saw police with very little apparent plan to get overwhelmed by the crowds of looters. This is insane. The aldermen are like the local politicians for certain areas in Chicago. And they've been button heads with the mayor for quite some time. This is a complete failure. Now they're saying that from, I guess, 10 until 6 a.m., they're going to be locking down parts of downtown. Why weren't you ready? You didn't need to have downtown locked down. But why didn't they have, a higher presence of police officers in certain areas? Why don't they have a plan for this? And now, hey, at least the alderman's calling it out. So good on him to say there was no plan and they were getting overwhelmed. Hopkins criticized Lightfoot for not being prepared after an earlier looting in May and June. Boom, there it is. Dude's saying basically what I'm saying. I defer to him. I'll defer to him. The real question today is, where was the strategy? What was the decision making at the highest levels? That means the police superintendent and the mayor, who's a very hands-on mayor when it comes to these kinds of these decisions. Hopkins painted a bleak picture for the city if Lightfoot can't get such criminal activity in and around downtown under control. So stop saying no. How many National Guard do you really need? Trump's right. Trump is right. Mark my words, man, they're going to regret it. Somebody tweeted, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Elijah Schaefer, that Donald Trump can't hold his rallies because of COVID. But hey, the widespread rioting may as well be campaign rallies for Trump because he's not being a dictator. He's not forcing these people to do anything, but he's warning you about what happens if you don't pay attention and you don't get your act together, and they're not getting their act together. And now this guy Hopkins, not the mayor. He's an alderman, so he has no problem saying it like it is. He says, literally, the future of Chicago hangs in the balance. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that. If this continues, how can Chicago survive? What will be left downtown after Water Tower Place gets boarded up and the for sale signs go up on all the condos near Michigan Avenue? People who live around there have had their sense of safety badly shaken. This is our tax base, by the way. We count on tax revenue from this area of the city to fund all number of other programs we count on. I don't know. Ask de Blasio. He announced he's going to be buying up these empty properties. Now that people are fleeing the city, he's got a great opportunity, tanking property value. Maybe it's on purpose. Maybe that's the real game. They don't care. They don't actually want a plan. They want to make it seem like they're trying, but it's not really happening. I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, though. Bill de Blasio of New York has said it. They're gonna be buying up these empty buildings, and that to me is wow, cutthroat, bloodthirsty opportunism. Now that people are suffering and being forced from their homes by chaos in the streets, he says we'll buy up the property at a discount, and we're gonna turn it into government program housing. Amazing. Chicago, you probably should have the National Guard come in. Otherwise, you're going to end up like New York, unless that's what they really, really want. You know, it's funny. Trump's been right about a lot of things. I wish he was a man of better preparedness and character. But I'll tell you what, if you think you're going to get me to vote for Joe Biden simply because Trump's got a potty mouth and he's off the cuff and he doesn't know how the system works properly, ill-prepared for the role of the presidency, no, I'm sorry. Trump could be the worst in terms of his professional behavior. And at this point, I don't care. He said it. National Guard. What do you think it's going to be like with the National Guard? I lived in Chicago. I've been in areas of the National Guard. It's fine. You walk up, you wave, you smile, you keep going about your business. But I'll tell you what, you get National Guardsmen in here, no more rioting, no more looting. Why won't they listen to Trump? Why won't they take his advice on federal resources? Why won't they take the help he has offered? They hate the man so much, they would rather their cities burn to the ground. Now, I don't. And that's the thing. A lot of people are like, Tim's finally, talking, jumping on the Trump train. No, I'm sorry. It's not true. I'll tell you this. As much as I don't like the man, you have to be insane to sit back, and watch all of this happen. And that's what they're doing. So I'll try and break it down for you. Trump, to me, was always a candidate. He was always a president. I just don't really like his demeanor and his professional behavior. And there are certain policy issues I disagree on. And I certainly wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. And I didn't care. Whatever. Now it's gotten real bad. And it's basically vote for Trump and the Republicans. Otherwise, these are what the Democrats are doing to these cities. At this point, I'm like, bro, I don't even like your policy or the way you talk, Trump, but at least you're offering up resources. Think about what we're looking at. A president like Trump who... bad diction, I think, as Sargon says it. But he's basically going like this. I've got police and assistance ready and available for any city that needs it. And they say no? Nah, those people are insane. I'll take the potty mouth guy who's going to send in law enforcement to keep my city safe and help make sure we can live peacefully. That makes way more sense. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Check it out, and I will see you all then.